They say that an image speaks 1,000 words. So, how about a riff? This is the book in a nutshell. Just one continuous heavy metal solo for 700 plus pages. Let me ask you this. Do you like gothic tales? Do you like baroque vibes of Castlevania? Do you enjoy anti-hero protagonists in the vein of Geralt of Rivia and Trevor Belmont? Even Elric of Melnibone? Do you have a poster of this guy on the wall? If the answer to a lot of these questions is positive, then you, like me, will probably enjoy this book. More so, this book will probably rock your world. Empire of the Vampire, with its catchy title, is written by Kristoff, a noted author of YA books. And I have decided to read this and review this for this occasion because, I was anticipating this book quite a bit because Kristoff has really good reputation, but I'm not generally all that interested in YA literature, and this was advertised as an adult book. It chronicles the many exploits of its lead anti-hero called Gabriel de Leon, who is a member of the Holy Silver Saint Order, created to fight the vampire menace who have risen to conquer humanity almost 30 years ago. And that's about as far as the plot goes from me, because I would like to talk about the genre or subgenre of vampire fiction and how it relates to this book. So, it is a vampire book full of vampire tropes, and I do mean full, loaded even. So why am I not complaining about them? In my opinion, a trope only becomes a cliche when it's overused and taken verbatim. Take the resident mixer and remixer in the movie making world, Quentin Tarantino. You could, I suppose, say that he ripped off an entire subgenre, like, say, Grindhouse or maybe a Western in his case, but I'm not sure you can rip off an entire subgenre. So, in this case, this novel almost has every known vampire trope known to a man. Because we have a half vampire or dhampir protagonist. He's not dhampir in this book, but in a lot of vampire fiction, a half vampire is a dhampir. And this protagonist or anti-hero is an asshole with a heart of gold who alienates everyone around him but actually means well. We have a stand-in for a corrupt Catholic church, even though it's not explicitly called that, but you can absolutely see parallels because it has an Inquisition who is even more corrupt. You have an ancient prophesized weapon that could end a vampire menace. You have vampire clans that have very distinct powers from one another. Say, Vampire the Masquerade comes to mind. You have a tragic love story, which almost any vampire story has a tragic love story. Even the narrative framework of the novel is derivative of another very famous work of fantasy literature, The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss, because the story is told in medias res, and most of the action is retold and actually happens in the past. Whoa, naughty microphone. So I could I could go on and on, so instead I would like to complement the clever ways it used the familiar tropes and made them into something interesting. So for example, you know how it is often the ultimate goal of any vampire brood in vampire fiction to remove their weaknesses as a vampire race. So number one vampire weakness in fiction is often the sunlight or the sun itself. And this element often happens at the very end of a movie or a vampire book. Let's say in Blade 2, I believe, or 1, this was the whole crux of the ending. There was a movie called Daybreakers, which also had a similar premise. Here in this book, the elimination of sunlight happens practically at a prologue, at the very, very beginning, and it poses a very real problem because it is actually part of the fabric of the world building, because it affects all of the world building elements you don't normally think about. Since the sunlight is very dim during the day, so dim that some vampires could exist in it, humanity relies on mushrooms and potatoes and substance that doesn't require a lot of sunlight to survive. Crops that could survive with very little sun. Also, the climate is affected, so is the wildlife. And various blights, diseases that flora undertakes as a result of this also happen. And another thing is, of course, the hunger. Half vampires in vampire fiction often feel hunger. They are just not the monstrous beings like their half or, well, full breed brethren. Again, we have someone like Blade who feels the bloodlust but has to take suppressants to survive. Here in this story, the half vampires, who are members of the Holy Order of Silver Saints, smoke the calcified hearts of full-blown vampires to satiate the sunlight and to satiate the bloodlust and to heal faster. They do heal faster normally, but they smoke it to put them on the level of full-blown vampires. Another thing is that ties into this element of smoking is a very real, very direct addiction theme in the novel. It's this cycle of unending addiction that reinforces itself. And it was one of my favorite parts of the novel. See, in the book, the Holy Order is this very strict, very dogmatic order that is very into its own farts. What I mean is, they take their tradition very seriously and they build upon it and reinforce it constantly. So once you go through the initiation as a holy knight, a silver saint, and you're recognized as a half vampire and so on, you are given the smoking equipment, a means to extract the heart and to smoke it. And it's ritualistic. It reinforces itself, but it's also a very real addiction because it at the same time is killing the smoker, but also making them stronger while exposing some of their weaknesses. Because if you are undergoing withdrawals, there is higher danger of you becoming feral as a half vampire if you took too long since your last smoke. Another thing, for example, is also water. Water is a very old motif, a very old obstacle in vampire fiction, where traditionally, back from the Bram Stoker's work, a vampire cannot cross water easily. They must follow some kind of tricks. They must employ a trick. In case of Dracula, the only way he could travel across the big body of water is to lie down in a coffin in his primeval soil. And that was difficult for him, but it was possible by using this trick. Here, water is an obstacle to undead, but since the dimmed sunlight actually affected the climate, the winters are very harsh. And what happens naturally is the bodies of water freeze. So if you find yourselves on the surface of a frozen lake and you are chased by a vampire, well, he's gonna chase you across the ice, but both of you are almost at an equal danger levels, because if you fall through the lake and the ice breaks, you're both gonna die. So that's one of the things that it does differently. Another really cool, very surface level in many ways in universe is the tattoo element. So the Holy Knights are heavily tattooed individuals. And again, it comes back to the ritualistic part of the order. But here, they also serve a very practical matter. See, the tattoos are made or inked from silver. And they serve as an armor in a fight, because any type of conventional armor, heavy plate mail, whatever, is virtually useless against an enemy. A vampire's punch is so strong, so heavy, that no amount of iron is probably gonna stop it. And the lighter you are, the probably better it is for you to flee. And since Silver Knights are half vampires and they have great healing regeneration powers, only they could heal from the process of tattooing freaking silver on them. So again, I could go on and on and on, but my point is that the characters are ridiculously fun, and the effect that the author achieved is having ridiculously fun characters with a very dire world state. But the dialogue is very cheeky, very clever, very on the nose, not too much. It's not third wall breaking, but there are some, I would say, lampshades to other works of literature that were fun but very subtle. And it's also a huge page turner. Maybe the page turner of the year for me. In the runnings for the best book I read all year, for sure. Because I don't need every book to be Nabokov or Blood Meridian, Cormac McCarthy, anything of the sort. Sometimes all it takes for me is to stumble upon a page turner that just holds you, grabs you, it doesn't let you go until the very last page. And this was Empire of the Vampire. So I would recommend for you to buy this novel and enjoy it. I cannot vouch for the audiobook because I read it in ebook form on my Kindle, but I recommend it. So this is as far as I am going to go with this. And I would like to thank you everyone for watching, and especially my Patreon supporters, but also anyone else who might stumble upon this, watch this. I urge you to subscribe, and a lot more videos coming in soon. See you next time. Bye-bye.